Hello, everybody. Here to talk about sermon this coming week. This past Sunday, I started our stewardship series of joyful generosity and began reflecting on a portion of chapter 9 in 2 Corinthians. And this coming week is the kind of part 2 of that sermon series. And we're still in chapter 9 of 2 Corinthians, verses 6 through 9. And there's some interesting pieces to this passage that we'll reflect on this Sunday. One of the things that's often talked about in terms of giving, when it comes to financial giving, is that people have kind of a mindset. They're either living out of a mindset of scarcity, where there's not enough to go around. And so if I give up a whole lot, I won't have enough if I give up too much. There's also the mindset, it's called the mindset of abundance, that there is more to go around than we could ever hope or dream for. And sometimes, even though I gravitate toward abundance, I realize that there's limitations sometimes to that. We want to live into abundance mentality, realizing that there's not just limited amount. There's more than enough to go around. And yet we see in our world places where there's more than enough, and other places of the world there's clearly not enough. But there's a third way to think about giving and sharing of resources, and that is what I would call a mindset of sufficiency. It's more than scarcity. It's not as abundant. It's not as full as abundance, but it's sufficiency. What's sufficient? And knowing that there are certain things we need in our own life to make our life work, but there's also room for others to expand, to allow their lives to feel sufficient within that. And so part of this notion that Paul talks about in chapter 9 is moving us out of scarcity toward an abundance thinking in terms of sufficiency, that there's a way that we can share and make a difference in other people's lives, and that our lives are enriched at the same way. Part of our giving is the motivation for giving and why we give, and some of the feelings we get when we give. And one of the things that Paul does in this passage, it's not real clear in the passage because the English translation of this is a little bit different, but in one of the verses it says, God loves a cheerful giver. And kind of makes you feel like, well, it's a happy-go-lucky kind of person. But the Greek translation of the word cheerful is actually much more powerfully done with a different word. Maybe a different way to have that sentence translated, said God loves a cheerful giver, is that God loves a hilarious giver. I mean, that takes a whole new meaning to the word cheerful when you think of hilarious. And there's something about, Paul knows, and I'll talk about this Sunday, there's some similarities between that emotion we feel when we're generous, when we're truly generous to another person, and the emotion we feel when we have hilarity in our life. When you think of that, when you just had that belly laugh and it just, reverberates through your body, and there's that feeling of just utter joy you feel when you just can't laugh and hardly catch your breath. Giving can have that same kind of emotive response within us. So this Sunday, we're going to explore what it means to be a hilarious giver. So I hope you'll join us on Sunday.